Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Before we begin today's session of the comprehensive news analysis, there are a few important announcements. Today marks the beginning of the Target Prelims 2022 crash course exactly at 7:30 p.m. on our YouTube channel. Do join us for the first class on Indian Polity taken by Samad sir. Tomorrow, that is class number 2, will again be of Indian Polity. That will be part 2 of Indian Polity. This course will go on every single day till the prelims examination at 7:30 p.m. on the YouTube channel of BYJU'S IAS. So if you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do it right away. Also, tomorrow and day after tomorrow, that is 1st and the 2nd of May, we will not have any CNA, that is a comprehensive news analysis, or the daily quiz videos. So we are on and off for those two videos for the next 2 days. The next CNA and the daily quiz video will be on the 3rd of May. Also, thousands of you who have already been attending the crash course on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, that will continue as it is. So you don't need to leave that. The YouTube course will also start from today at 7:30 p.m. while the app course will continue as it is. If you have not started to attend that, please do that by downloading the BYJU'S Exam Prep app right away. Now let's begin today's analysis with the first article that is focusing on the controversy that time and time again comes into our headlines, that is about the imposition of Hindi language throughout the country. The author here is an Under Secretary to the government of Kerala. That is why he is of the view that imposition of Hindi or considering Hindi as a language for the entire country is a false conception and something that we should move beyond now. He says that recently the Union Home Minister, that is Shri Amit Shah, made a statement that Hindi should be used as a lingua franca rather than English. So what Mr. Amit Shah had said recently is that in the interstate communication, rather than one state communicating with the other state in English language, we should rather try and switch to Hindi. Now that erupted a lot of controversy. While the Home Minister clarified that he is not asking for giving any preferential treatment to Hindi over any other Indian language. If the two states, for example, are communicating in Tamil, Gujarati, Rajasthani, that is absolutely fine. But if you are communicating in English, then it is better to switch to Hindi. That was his point of view. However, over here, many people, especially from the non-Hindi states, took objection to this. The author also belongs to one of those groups as well. The author here says that the thinking of the Union Home Minister stems from the idea that was first advocated by Veer Damodar Savarkar, where he gave the idea of Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan. Now, this is an idea, as per the author, that would be detrimental to the diversity and to the unity of the country, and something that the political leaders should have left behind many years ago. If you look at the 1961 census in India, there were about 1,652 mother tongues, out of which 184 mother tongues had over 10,000 speakers. So the notion that Hindi should be the language which should be spoken by everyone in India or majority of the people in India does not hold true. Even if you look at the total number of Hindi speakers in India, they are not in the majority. As per the author, in 1971, the linguistic data that was offered in the census had divided the languages into two categories. One, that were officially recognized in the 8th schedule of the constitution, and the other languages which had at least 10,000 speakers each were also listed. Apart from that, languages having less than 10,000 speakers were together called as others. Also, there is a myth that we believe that Hindi is spoken by a majority of the people in India, which is not true. He says that many people are of the view that there are at least 52 crore Hindi speakers in India. While even the number 52 crore would not be a majority of India's population, but even this 52 crore as per the author is not correct. Because in many of these cases, we include Bhojpuri speakers, speakers of other languages which are similar to Hindi as Hindi speakers, which is not true. People who speak in Rajasthani, people who speak different languages in the state of Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh are often mistaken as Hindi speakers, and that is how we arrive at this number of 52 crore. So it is a highly inflated number and we do not have these many Hindi speakers purely in the country. And even if we do consider it, Hindi population would not be spoken by over 30% of India's population, meaning that 70% of people in India don't recognize Hindi as their mother tongue. So what is the purpose of imposing Hindi on that 70% population when it is going against the idea of unity in diversity? The author also gives examples of countries outside India. He says that there are many examples floating around of two types of countries. One, those countries which try to impose their one single language throughout the country. Let's take an example of Pakistan, take an example of Sri Lanka, and we see in both these countries it has been detrimental to the national unity and it has led to violence on a large scale. In case of Pakistan, they tried to impose Urdu in East Pakistan, that is today's Bangladesh, which led to the beginning of the movement, which eventually led to the liberation of Bangladesh. Similarly, in Sri Lanka, the majority Sinhalese population wanted to impose their language over the non-Sinhalese population, many of whom spoke Tamil and who were of the Indian origin. This was also the basis of the civil war that led to thousands of people being killed in Sri Lanka and the country going into an economic turmoil for many, many, many years. In contrast, there are countries that have accepted their diversity in terms of language. Let's look at Singapore. Singapore has a majority population which is of Chinese origin. They also have people from Malay origin and of Indian origin. Because the Chinese origin people were in majority, there has been a demand in Singapore for many years that Chinese should be declared as the official language. But Singapore has resisted that temptation to ensure that everyone who is contributing to the country, even the people who are working at the lowest level, should not think that someone else's identity is being imposed on them. And that is why Singapore, even today, remains one of the most diverse, one of the most peaceful and advanced nations in not just Asia but throughout the world. Take an example of South Africa also, a country called as a rainbow nation because of so much diversity and so many different tribes having different languages and culture. In South Africa, in fact, their own national anthem is composed in 5 languages, which is the most unique national anthem in the world. It is not just in any one single language. This is a hallmark of how the linguistic diversity has been preserved in South Africa, which has helped them to emerge as a leader of the African continent and one of the most peaceful nations of Africa, where the problems of civil war, etc., are very, very common in the continent. Now, India has to decide which path do we have to take. Do we have to take the path that is taken by Singapore and South Africa, or do we have to go towards the path that has been taken by our neighbors, Sri Lanka and Pakistan, knowing fully the consequences of those decisions? Now, since this debate of Hindi language and the status of Hindi language comes time and time again in our headlines every 6 months to every 8 months, this is one of those data that you keep on seeing very often. Data such as the most spoken language in India, led by Hindi, then Bengali, Marathi, Telugu, Tamil, Gujarati, etc. Then the number of people who consider these languages as their mother tongue, and also the state-wise data of how many Hindi speakers do we have in certain states of India. Now, this is not a new data that you are seeing for the first time, but again, because the topic is so relevant and is under debate, not just in our newspaper but also on Twitter. If you would have seen the debate between Ajay Devgan and Sudeep, that is the Kannada actor, you would realize that all this data is very, very important for you to remember. Also, there is a misconception in the minds of many people. We regard India as the most linguistically diverse nation in the world. Many of you would also have this misconception. Many of you would also think that India has the most number of languages in the world, which is not really true. Actually, if you look at the nation which has the most number of languages, it is actually Papua New Guinea, which has about 840 languages in such a small country. Then we also have Indonesia with 711 languages. India is at the 4th place with 456 languages being spoken across the world. So yes, we do have a lot of languages, but don't make a statement saying that India has the most number of languages in the world, because that title goes to the small island nation of Papua New Guinea. One of the other reasons why this is in the news is because recently, just a few weeks back, our Home Minister Amit Shah made another statement. He said that Hindi will be made compulsory in northeastern states till class 10th. Now, as you know, a lot of northeastern states actually recognize English as one of their official languages. So his target was to remove English and give its place to Hindi. This also did not really go well with the political leaders in the northeast state, and many of them have been protesting ever since this statement has been made. Interestingly, this also goes against the idea that was furnished by the National Education Policy that said that the 3 language formula should continue and no language should be imposed on any state of India. This is in direct contradiction to what the Union Home Minister said. So it is for the government to decide which path do they want to take forward, the one that is suggested by the Union Home Minister or the one that has been envisioned in the National Education Policy. The next article that we have here is about the Prime Minister's recent controversial remark in his meeting with the Chief Ministers of the states during the review meeting of the COVID situation, where he said that certain states, obviously the ones which are not ruled by the BJP, have not cut down the VAT taxes on petrol, even though the center government had reduced the taxes on their part. And these states, such as West Bengal, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, etc., are not passing on the tax cut benefits to the people, which is an injustice to the people of their states. Now, this obviously did not really go well with the opposition members for various reasons. Number one, the meeting was not really supposed to be for that. The meeting in which the Prime Minister made this remark was about the review meeting of the COVID 19 pandemic situation. Secondly, the Prime Minister using such a platform, especially to point out towards those states which are not ruled by the BJP, did not really go well because he deliberately named those states, as I said earlier, West Bengal, Maharashtra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, etc., even though the petrol prices and the diesel prices are high across the country. And thus, it has led to another disagreement between the states and the center. Now, if you would remember, it was in November 2021, just a few weeks before the UP and the other states elections, that the center government had announced that we are cutting down on the excise duty of petrol and diesel. Petrol duty was cut by rupees 5 and diesel duty was cut by rupees 10 per litre. After which many states also followed the same example, mainly the BJP ruled states, and it led to a reduction in the prices of petrol and diesel in most of the states. However, most of the non-BJP ruled states did not take that decision. And this is what the Prime Minister is pointing towards. Now, the Prime Minister said that inflation is running very high across the country, and the main driver of this inflation is the fuel prices. So, if we have to control the inflation, at the end of the day, we have to put a limit on the fuel prices which are soaring every single day. He said that the center government has done their bit and now it is on the state governments to follow the same. However, if you look closely, it is not the state governments only that are to be blamed. The center government has repeatedly been saying that even though we had the pandemic, even though we distributed free vaccinations, etc., to most of the population in India, the center government never introduced any new tax. But the reality is different. There has been a huge hike in the fuel taxes ever since the COVID 19 lockdown had started. Not just this, many of these hikes have come in the form of cess. Now, the sad part is that the cess money is not divided between the center and the states. Whatever money the union government earns from cess belongs to them only. On the other hand, whatever money they earn from the taxes is divided between center and the states as per the recommendation of the Finance Commission. So that also goes against the concept of cooperative federalism, that you are filling up your own coffers, not giving any money to the states, and on the other hand asking the states to cut down on their taxes. In fact, the states are worried that after July this year, their GST compensation from the center government would end. So they would anyways have to face a lot of shortfall of revenue. So they are really not in a position to cut down on the VAT taxes that they are imposing on the fuel right now. Now, as I said earlier, this COVID review meeting turned into a political blame game because the Prime Minister took this opportunity to name specific opposition ruled states and also praise the BJP ruled states, which was not really expected in this kind of a meeting. Also, let's see how exactly are the fuel prices made up. So this is an average fuel price and what are the different components. If you see, the base price of petrol and diesel is almost half of what you are paying right now. So base price of diesel as of 16th of April was about 56 rupees 32 paisa. Then we have the excise duty. So excise duty is put by the center government. And then we have the VAT. VAT is something that is put by the respective state governments. So if you can see, on an average, the VAT number is lower as compared to the excise duty. So center government, even after reduction of the excise duty, has been imposing a lot of excise duty on these petroleum products. Many Congress leaders, in fact, have come out in the open and said that during our rule, the excise duty on the fuel was not even rupees 10 per litre. So please don't lecture us on how we can reduce the excise and the VAT on these products. Also, if you see this graph, which shows you how much money has the center and the state governments been collecting on the fuel products. If you see from 2014-15, there has been a very small increase in this blue bar. Blue bar shows you the money that is collected by the states from the taxes on petrol. But if you look at the red bar, the number has increased significantly in 2020-21. That is, the tax collected by the center government from the fuel products has increased drastically in this year and was in fact constantly increasing if you take 2014-15 as the base year. So it is the center government as per the states that has to look into their taxes and cut down on that rather than pointing towards the state. Also, this is the India-wide picture of how much taxes do you and I pay on the petrol and the diesel that we buy. Now, this number that you see on the screen is combined, that is center and the state taxes are including. So, for example, the cheapest is in Lakshadweep. Center and the state taxes combined would only amount for 34.6 rupees. Andaman Nicobar also cheaper considerably. They would have 35.3 rupees as the taxes on per liter of petrol. Now let's look at some states such as Maharashtra. 52.5 rupees, almost 50% of the money that you're paying to buy petrol, that is going into the government coffers. This is how much money we are giving to the government every time we are filling the petrol or the diesel tanks of our bike or of our car. The next article that we have here is an interesting decision by the Madras High Court, according to which Mother Nature will now be considered as a living being with a legal entity. The court said that the Mother Nature has its rights, duties and liabilities like a living person. Now, what does it mean exactly and what are the implications? Now, see, in very simple terms, let's say you're walking on the road and there's another person that is coming in front of you. Now, can you take your chocolate wrapper and put it in some other person's pocket? Or can you take a chocolate wrapper and throw it over some other person? No, you would not do that because the other person then might hit you or might go to the court against you and take some action. But you do throw that wrapper, you do throw that waste whenever you see a corner on the road, whenever you see any open ground, because you know that no one will be here to take any action. Now the Madras High Court is saying that if you do such a thing against Mother Nature, even then a case will be filed against you because Mother Nature will also be considered as a living being or a living entity. That is the entire implication of this decision. The Madras High Court invoked the jurisdiction of parents patriae. Now, this is a Latin phrase, so if my pronunciation is not up to the mark, I'm sorry. I'll explain it just a bit later what exactly is this. The court said that Mother Nature is being accorded rights such as fundamental rights, legal rights, constitutional rights for its own survival and safety and well-being. Only and only then we human beings would respect Mother Nature and give it the kind of respect that it deserves. Now, this Latin phrase that you see in this article, parents patriae jurisdiction. Now, what is this? The meaning of this phrase is parent of the nation. Now, in simple terms, what it means is that the government of the country or the government of that area has a responsibility to be a parent towards all the citizens. Let's say there is a child who does have parents, but the parents are not taking care of the child. They are beating the child, not taking the child to the school, not giving him or her the required food. Then the state can intervene and the state can say that I am the bigger parent. I am the parent of the nation and I will take care of the child. Similarly, in this case also, the government can come in and say that we will take care of the nature. And if you are the one who are going against the nature, if you are the one who are throwing waste or not respecting the nature, then we can file a case against you on behalf of the nature. So this is what the court has said, that the Mother Nature will also be considered as a living entity now. Now this might seem like a unique or an interesting kind of a decision, but this has not happened for the first time, not even in India. In India also there have been different examples of similar kind of things happening in the past, and in the world also I'll show you some examples. So in India, the most recent of these judgments was in 2020 when the Punjab and Haryana High Court declared the Sukhna Lake as a living entity or a living person having rights, duties, liabilities. So very similar to what has happened with the Madras High Court right now. Now this lake is in Chandigarh. So the court said that all the citizens of Chandigarh are loco parentis, means they are in place of a parent, so they have to take care of this lake as a parent and save it from becoming extinct. The first country to actually start and come up with this idea was Ecuador. In 2008, Ecuador enshrined legal rights of nature in its constitution. Then Bolivia also had a similar law in 2011. New Zealand in 2017 became the first country to grant the Vengunai River legal rights, which were followed by India in the state of Uttarakhand when Yamuna and the Ganga River were considered as legal entities. However, this decision of the High Court of saying that Ganga and Yamuna are legal entities was later on stayed by the Supreme Court of India. So this is not the first time that this is happening in India or in countries across the world. Also, as I told you earlier, when you consider that a particular body, let's say a river or a park or a mountain, is a living entity, what you're actually doing is you are giving them the right and telling the people now you cannot openly pollute this area, you cannot do anything illegal in this area because this area is also a living entity and action will be taken against you. This is the entire idea of preserving, of ensuring that this particular place is not taken for granted. Now, these were the few articles that we had worthy of being discussed in today's CNA from the Hindu newspaper. A couple of practice questions. Elaborate the constitutional status of Hindi language in India. Have these constitutional provisions been misinterpreted as a special preference for Hindi language? Second, how far would the idea of naming rivers and lakes as living entity go in preserving them? Discuss with suitable examples. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video.